Ladies and gents, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the red chair, Mr. Bob Savage. So Bob, a lot of people living in this community are aware of EMC, and they're primarily aware of EMC because it is such a huge employer in this area. But typically, most people don't really know what EMC does and so on. So what is it that EMC does?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me here. It's been a while since I was in the White Horse. I walked in this evening and I hope to walk out this evening as well.
Yeah, okay.
Because my car isn't actually that far parked away.
Okay.
Because now we're in a number of locations in Ballincollig. But so EMC is a high-tech company that's in transformation in many ways. Where we, without sounding arrogant, we are a top-class supplier of storage solutions with support, hardware, software. But the world around us is changing, and you've heard even some of it tonight in the other talks, that the mobile, social, big data and cloud revolution is changing things. And this is my chance to pay tribute as well to Joe Tucci, our CEO, who, when you have someone with the vision to buy VMware and make it part of the family, but keep it out there dealing with the cloud since 2004, you figure we are getting ready for this transformation for a while. But it is going to be disruptive. And the one thing about this disruption is it's going to be led by the consumer, much more so than any of the previous ones, and I can remember some of them. So we're in the high-tech computer business. We're moving very much into cloud, embracing big data, and of course, very well aware of the security aspects of it. And that's exactly where we are now, in transition, and very excited about it.
Brilliant. And you mentioned VMware there because, of course, EMC has is it an affiliate or a part ownership position in VMware, which also is a large employer in this area?
So over 700 people in Ballincollig here, and we have a majority share in it.
Sure.
And it plays in an area of the market that traditional core EMC doesn't. And that's the way it's been set up. It wasn't fully absorbed like maybe other acquisitions. It plays well in now. It's obviously virtualization of servers, but it's much more than that now. It's a software-defined data center. It's focusing on end-user computing and a lot of very exciting stuff, and led by Pat Gelsinger, who is a hero in the industry, coming from Intel and spent a lot of time with EMC. Brilliant.
And you mentioned that number of 700 for VMware, but in terms of, you know, I know these numbers are always a moving target, but within, let's say, the Cork region, EMC and its affiliates and even its kind of key suppliers, what level of employment is it presently responsible for?
So we're in the Cork area, we're just over 3,000 right now. Oh. If you look at traditional core EMC, where we are now, dealing with a lot of the actual transition to software and virtualization of storage and security, VMware, as I said, we have a joint venture between VMware EMC, Cisco, and a bit of Intel, which is our V-Block product, which is cloud in a box, which is really growing at an astronomical rate. Over 100 here again in Ballincollig. And then, not too far up the road, RSA, our security division, based in Shannon.
Great. And Bob, what's your role then in that organisation? What is it you do?
Well, the official title is Vice President and Managing Director of EMC here in Ireland, at the Centre of Excellence that we have. I've been with EMC since 1988, so they haven't quite found me out yet. And it's been a huge privilege to be, I suppose my role, if you want a job description, is bringing people together, connecting people across the organisation, driving innovation, strong links with the community, speaking with one voice, truly making it a great place to work. And that's not just a badge over the door, but a place where people can come and safely work and develop their careers. Yeah. And that really is probably the description of what I try to do every day.
So you mentioned there, Bob, that you mentioned 1988 because EMC locally has been celebrating 25 years in this region, and you were there in the very first year, right? So what was your first ever touch point with EMC? Can you remember what was your...
Well, you know, it's a great chance for me to pay tribute as well to Dick Lehan, who started this all off. The E of EMC, the now late Dick Egan, who was a US ambassador to Ireland as part of his own career journey, came here He'd obviously done his math, as we'd say in the US, in terms of where best to go, but obviously connections with this area were an important part. He also had a meeting with Larry Poland of the Department of Electrical Engineering in CIT, or RTC it was then, who was very passionate about talent and very passionate about people that could join EMC, and that's certainly something that stuck with him all through the years. The objective at that stage was to set up a manufacturing base within the then EEC, the now EU. But I think thanks to the vision of Dick Egan and the vision of Dick Lehan, that it was going to move well beyond that as quickly as possible into a multi-function campus. And it did over the years to where we are today in EMC, 30 different business units. And we've also grown from a diversity perspective, which I am hugely proud of. 44 different nationalities, 26 languages. So, you know, since 1988, with a basic manufacturing mandate to now 30 business units with a lot of advanced research, development and software. So we're in a very good spot, I think.
Great. So can you remember the first time you ever heard the letters EMC? Can you remember where you were when you first heard about them?
Yeah, well, I suppose, you know, I qualified a number of years earlier and I was working for a number of indigenous companies. The indigenous sector at that stage wasn't probably the best place to be, unlike where it is now. But the advice you always got from career guidance was, you know, if you're an electronic engineer, which I was, you know, you get a job with a US multinational, ideally a startup. Yeah. I had some disk drive experience, and I remember being interviewed on Easter time by Dick Lehan. He saw the disk experience and he said, listen, better get someone on board here fairly quick and dispatch him to the US so we can get this show on the road. So that's where the first time I saw EMC. The EMC square is a play on names and computers, but obviously the Einstein thing came to mind probably much more so than the computer thing. You know? Sure.
And what was it like in those early days? You even mentioned the word startup there. Did it have that feel when you went from day one?
Like, let's put it this way, I learned an awful lot in the early days, spent a bit of time in the US, came back here. I was a test engineer, but was a jack of all trades in terms of, and learned to deal, I suppose the biggest thing that I had was learn to deal with other disciplines. And you know, some of us in engineering, you can get quite overconfident about where you are and you're an engineer, but you know, dealing with supply chain and purchasing people, it caused me to go away and do, say, the IPIX exams and be able to converse with and realise early on the importance of cross-functional teams working together. That was a big learning early on. But being capable, the can-do attitude, which is still an EMC thing, is get up there and do anything that has to be done. And that is the thing that's stuck with me from day one right up to now.
Sure. And those first few weeks that you were in the nascent EMC in Cork, did you have that sense in your gut, or were you even thinking about it, that, you know, I could be here for 25 years? Or did it ever feel like that?
I suppose that far back, didn't think that way. Didn't even probably realise that, you know, what EMC was involved with at the time was we were making copies of memory devices and storage devices for the then mini computers, which are no longer with us, from IBM and DEC and Wang and Prime and so on. And that business really, it wasn't as viable as maybe we thought. And we went through, by 88 to 91, things weren't working out so good. But then we had the genius of Dick Egan before we had the genius of Joe Tucci, who brought on board some Israelis that had some incredible ideas around disk storage and technology, and got them on board in the early 90s. And then we knew fairly soon that things were on the right path.
So back in those early days, can you remember a time or a moment when you might have said to yourself, you know what, I'm actually going to make something out of this. I'm going to step up, I'm going to lead in some way here. Can you remember kind of evolving into that mindset, or when was the first time you had such a thought?
Yeah, well certainly, you know, I still to this day wonder why I did engineering. I did engineering because I wanted to figure out how a computer worked. And with a lot of help from a lot of people, once I figured that out, I probably lost a bit of interest in engineering to a degree. Okay. And it was a hugely important education, and I've leveraged the engineering degree a lot, but I'm not really a great engineer. You'd know Les Gosling, I know Rowan Honest here tonight, he'd know Les Gosling. That's an engineer for you, right? Yeah. So I'd be more of a technologist, but I leveraged the technology and the people thing and said, yeah, this technology people space is where I can actually do a decent job. And I probably figured that out the mid-90s, and in my first team lead role, in EMC, and you know, enjoyed working with people, learning from people, and hopefully helping a few people along the way.
Yeah. One of the, I know it came up in some of our early talks, but one of the, I guess it's probably the best way that we learn, right, is we tend to learn more acutely or more clearly from setbacks and failures than we do from let's say, success. So can you remember some of the failures, let's say, and setbacks that you would have had in that kind of, let's say, first 10 years that might have shaped your path?
Oh yeah, like I probably wouldn't go into the colour of each raw detail, because there was too many of them there. But I suppose that brings me on to emotional intelligence, and something that I've really embraced over the years. Naturally, to do a job, you have to have the requisite amount of intellectual intelligence, but you certainly have to grow your awareness and appreciation of what I call emotional intelligence. And obviously, the first one that comes to mind there is a passion for what you do, motivation. But you also got to be self-aware, and you've also got to figure out, you know, you've got to listen to someone that you really trust to take, and to figure out where your shortcomings are. And I have plenty and had probably many more. But then you're looking at also empathy, how we're getting on with people. And you know, when you're working in a company for a long time with different bosses, empathy is a very important thing of how you work that. And then the other one is important in a working environment, political awareness, not being political, no, but political awareness. And simply that means knowing when to talk and knowing when to shut up.
Yeah.
And that's something you learn a little bit every year as you go along.
Please don't shut up tonight. We need you to keep talking.
I see Pat Dorgan laughing though, so he likes that.
Yeah. Was there ever a time when you were driving home and you said, screw the whole lot of them, I'm out of here?
Yeah.
Can you remember the most recent time you thought that?
So I qualify the answer to that as in, yeah, it happens more often than people might care to think about. But when you actually do a little analysis and you listen to your trusted advisor, a lot of that is yourself. So you've got to figure out when you're working in an environment, you know, I go back to the Great Place to Work. And we were here 25 years, and it has not all been plain sailing. And the real test of a great place to work is when the so-called hits the fan. And you told me not to use bad language, so I'm not going to use that. So, and it's how you react to that and how you deal in that situation when things go wrong and when you have issues and challenges internally, externally. That's the real test of a great place to work. And that's I suppose the abiding thing about EMC, that yeah, we have bad days and we have bad weeks and we drive home in bad form, but you know, besides the emotional intelligence comes a wisdom. Why do you do things at 44 that you wouldn't do at 24? There's a wisdom there of appreciating what you have. And that certainly would be my take on EMC. And you know, faraway hills are always a little greener, and I've seen people who've left EMC at various times and then realised what EMC offered as a great place to work, develop your career and build your network.
You come across as a very strong person, especially in that environment. But have there been times when it's just knocked you on the ass? Even has it, you know, brought you to tears on occasion? Or have you ever experienced that?
Well, I'm not going to give you the specifics of this because that camera's out there, but yes, it has. Of course it has. And I think it would be foolish for anyone not to admit that it hasn't. Yeah. But it's back to like the entrepreneurs. This is where the real learning can occur, should you choose to learn from it. Yeah. It's when things go wrong and you know that you have challenges, and when you are dealing with challenges at a personal level or with people in the team, that's where the huge learning comes in. And the day you're learning it, you don't feel it. Yeah. But 10 weeks, 20 weeks down the road, you can apply the learning really well to build a solid wall of defense around what EMC stands for and what the ecosystem is. But there are some pretty, I don't think in any company, big or small, that you're not going to have days that are going to be without stress or where you'd question yourself. Yeah.
So I'm curious, you know, if you can, being a technical person, if you can imagine a line, let's say a plot on a graph, and that you're learning, especially the kind of learning you've referenced in terms of both yourself and you know, your leadership and so on. Do you think that rate of learning is steady? Is it accelerating, or does it tend to be front-loaded? You tend to learn a lot in the early years and then you're only learning incrementally from that?
Yeah, it's. I never thought of it in that way, but you have to be in learning mode all the time. In the high-tech business, you also have to be, skills go out of date pretty quickly. So it has to become part of the culture or the norms that you're in learning. Now, the type of learning is more inquiry-based and working with people and that kind of thing. But certainly, if I look at where we are now, talking about the technology, I have to understand where customers are. I have to figure out, yeah, we're in a sustaining area of the market now where we're still providing great storage solutions, but at the same time we've got to prepare for what our customers are going to require 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road. So I've got to understand and appreciate the technology, and I've got to understand and appreciate who are best to put into those places. And so the learning is of a different shape for me, with a strong awareness of the technology, but for those who are involved as we really try to build our technological base, it's fairly, I wouldn't say exponential, but it's you have to learn pretty quick, and there's a lot of things to understand about. But our 4 values of the Centre of Excellence will probably tell you, because values tend to guide your behaviour. The 4 values are, first of all, our people. Next one is TCE, or Total Customer Experience. Next one is always innovating, because we're not low cost here. We're driving a value proposition based on driving new forms of value across the organisation. And innovation, by the way, is not just for the science and technologists, it's for everybody. It's about doing things differently, or doing something that nobody else is doing. And that applies to the accountant or the shared service expert as it does to the consulting engineer. And our last one is what we call a better tomorrow. And it's about making sure that we work closely with and become part of the community we're in. And the TCE one is something that I spend a lot of time on, because it's not just our customers, but we have a clear message in EMC. And I think we lost a lot of this in the Celtic Tiger here. But, whether you're a customer or a supplier or any kind of executive stakeholder, the minute you leave your own runway until you get back, the experience has to be second to none. And we're driving that relentlessly. So it's the taxi ride that you have, it's the hotel you stay in, it's where you play golf or fish. This is a thing that not just affects EMC, but it's something that I think is very important for Ireland. Our customer experience is what will differentiate us in many ways in the global world we're in. We look at EMC right now in 2014, and Ireland has no divine right to EMC's capital dollars in 2014. We have to earn that right in the global world. And that customer experience is one of those key differentiators, should we decide to make it so.
Yeah. I'd like to come back to a point that Donna raised earlier, and it's an uncomfortable word in many ways, and it's the concept of sacrifice. So for you to get from where you were day one as the drive guy, through to tonight, speaking with such eloquence about those concepts, what kind of sacrifices have you had to make along that path?
It's probably more important what sacrifices my family have made, more than me. My coach would have said to me back in 2000 that you can have Joe Tucci's job if you want to, but the consequences might be, what you have to give up. Yeah. I'm not quite sure he was right there, but certainly the general manager of EMC in Ireland, there are sacrifices. And my wife and 2 boys have certainly seen little of me, but we came to an agreement that certainly over the first 5 or 6 years that this would be quite a 60-hour-a-week type of job. Yeah. For me, I love it. Yeah. It's a vocation for me, and I have to be very aware of what they've given up. Maybe they're better off without me, but what they've given up for me to do this. Yeah. And that goes as well, I think, for anyone who wants to be successful. One of the things that I would say in EMC, and the guys would definitely heard it, is you have to work hard. It's like the 10,000 hours thing. And I've certainly done the 10,000 hours, and many others have done it over the last 5 years. But you've got to be capable. This is the leadership thing. You've got to be capable of a 75-hour week. You can't do it every week. The secret is knowing when you have to do it. Yeah. And that's some of the work. And you have to be aware that there is a career and life there. And I am hugely appreciative of what I've been left to do from home and what people have sacrificed at home to allow me to do this.
Great. I don't know if people are aware, but Bob actually was awarded a very prestigious award, I think the year before last, when you were named Ireland's Most Trusted Leader, which is a nice accolade. There you go. They're applauding. No, Bob, they haven't heard what I'm about to ask.
Should I leave now?
Actually, it's not that bad. So, If you asked the people working with and for you, how do you think they'd describe your leadership style?
Wow. Accessible would be the first word that comes to mind. I spend a lot of time managing by walking around as much as I can, and that's a very selfish thing, would you believe? Because I learn an awful lot from that. Yeah. So one of our coaches teaches a program called Team Leader Essentials, and that's for people who are on the first rung of people management, or those who want to figure out, is that for me? And that's been going on now. There's about 17 or 18 classes of it, and I attend the opening day of it. I talk a little bit about EMC and where we are and why this is a good place to stay and develop your career. And then I come back and listen to questions and field some questions, and hopefully make people feel comfortable enough that they can ask some pretty raw questions. But the learning I get from that is tremendous. And I'm really sincere about it, because that cohort of people, if EMC is going to be here for another 25 years, and I believe it certainly is going to have a great shot at it, that's the next generation of leaders. So they need the attention that I can give, because if we're really serious about the future, that is the future. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's also a great way to get to know people, because you've got to, you know, the most important thing you have is your people. We have a centre of excellence, and you know, that can be an abused term, but we have a fairly straightforward definition of what that means. A centre of excellence is about people. It's about talented, motivated, career-minded individuals who are part of those 31 business units. And the reality is that those business units must be operationally excellent, must be strategically relevant to the EMC cause. We're here for a reason to make profit. But the secret sauce of all of this is when the people in those business units come together and do new and different things that have value to our customers, to help us increase revenue, to take risk out of the business. And that really is the essence of what we try to do. And it starts and ends with people. And if you say that and believe that, well, you've got to walk the walk with it as well.
Yeah. What pisses you off?
Rocket lettuce, for a start. Can't understand that at all. But if that's all that pisses me off, I'm probably okay.
Yeah. My sense is it probably isn't, though.
I really like genuine, passionate people. Therefore, I dislike the other type. Okay. I like people who will make an effort and really feel that they're part of the team. I have little patience for the other type, and tons of patience, because I've learned to acquire that patience for the people who really want to be part and want to work and become part of the fabric of what EMC is trying to do. Yeah.
And how have you learned to handle that dissatisfaction that you would get with other people? Because I assume they're in the organisation, right? I mean, by nature of a large organisation. How have you learned to kind of handle that over years?
Well, you know, the first thing I learned many years ago is that you can't build a team with everybody like yourself. That would be very foolish. Yeah. And you have a mix of people with different views and different ways. And not everybody also in a team will be running at 100 miles an hour. Yeah. If you had, as we'd say, people who excel and are high potential and nothing else on a team, you probably have anarchy. Yeah. So finding the balance there is very important. But at the same time, there must be a passion there. There must be feel, yeah, I want to be part of this in whatever way. People have different priorities, etc., etc. Not everybody's going to do the 75 hours a week, but unless you have a passion about it, it's difficult to empathize, shall we say?
Sure. Would you classify yourself as being an optimistic person?
Yeah, I would.
How do you feel about the future of the business here, and also just in terms of the overall economy locally in the tech scene? So
I suppose two of the other privileged positions, and I don't use that word lightly. I've been on the board of Enterprise Ireland for the last 3 years. Donna talked earlier about leadership for growth. For someone who spent practically all his life in multinational land, which isn't another dimension, by the way, or it is still a very vibrant part of who we are. And if I look, this is a long-winded answer now, so you've got to wait for this one. Mm-hmm. If I look at, say, Digital Equipment, who came here in 74, left in 94, The legacy has been confident, career-minded, well-travelled people who went and started their own businesses or went to other multinationals, etc., as we had a case with EMC when we were really growing. But, so that sector is alive and well and vibrant. But the exciting thing for me is the way the indigenous sector is developing. Not just in tech, but in areas like food, which I think is going to be explosive for us, particularly in the milk dairy area over the next 5 or 7 years. So I'd be realistic in saying that I'd be very positive about the next. Should we decide to work hard, connect the dots and do it, it's not going to be handed to us on a plate. But if I look at the tech sector right now and kind of say the ecosystem is here, there is government support for cloud, big data, global risk compliance, all that kind of stuff. There's a fantastic, here in the room and beyond around the country, great, micro enterprises, high potential startups, scaling, all really coming along. I believe that we're going to have some NASDAQ listings in the next number of years in some of this space, which is a great figure of merit. We have every multinational bar none in the cloud big data space here. We have the universities and IoTs beginning to engage. Obviously, if I look at what we're doing in terms of education around Masters in Cloud Computing with CIT, Masters in Data Business with IMI UCC. So we really have a chance in the way that we weren't in the mainframe or in the mini or even in the chip area. Ireland can really shine in this cloud big data revolution. And I firmly believe that. And it's not going to be handed to us, we're not going to fall asleep and suddenly it's going to be there. But that, with food and tourism and some other areas, I believe that we have a tremendous future over the next 7 years and beyond. And we need to start thinking beyond that as well. I think that's it's an exciting time for something. It's very important now that we begin to forget about the doom and gloom and begin to look at what entrepreneurs are doing around the place. I sometimes talk with Frank Ryan. Enterprise Ireland companies are sometimes the best kept secret, and part of my mission going forward, on or off the board, is make sure that Ireland knows about some of the great entrepreneurs that are here and some of the great innovators that are beginning to take shape on the world stage, not just here in Ireland.
Yeah. Now, of course, you have an awful lot of touch points with the executives in the US, but also in the kind of growing Europe and the EMEA region, as it's called. And have you found any shift in sentiment towards Ireland in the last 5 years since things have gone a wee bit pear-shaped, or how's that changed?
So I'd go from the executive to say, one of the great things about us in Ireland is that we travel. And we have Irish guys based in the Far East, all around Europe, Singapore, etc. And I keep in touch with them as the EMC diaspora as much as I can. And certainly across Asia and the EMEA, the Europe, Middle East, Africa area, our reputation is growing. We didn't welch in our debt. We've had to take the austerity. They clearly see the growth areas, and I think we're being looked at again. And this is Irish people based in these locations listening to the feedback. And the feedback over 12 and 13 has been growing and positive.
Great. I want to invite people in the audience to ask you a few questions while we have you in the red chair. But before I do so, I have a reasonably complicated question to end on. And it is this. So I won't ask you what age you are, Bob, but the 25 years
50
younger.
50 this year.
Okay, well, the 25-year-old, happy birthday, Bob. The 25-year-old Bob Savage is sitting down there, and he's about to take his first trip out to EMC for his first day of work. And you can hand him a page on which there are 2 columns. One is, do more of this stuff, young Bob, and do less of the other stuff. Give me a couple of things that would be on each side of that ledger now. Let's start with the mores, maybe, or whatever you prefer. Whatever you prefer. You might have a preference.
I suppose I had enough this is about me now, right? So on the mores, again, I go back to the passion and enthusiasm. I don't think you can have too much of that. More appreciation for people, a little bit less short-tempered. To acquire a bit more wisdom of dealing with people a little earlier. that's probably where I would focus it more on, because I was a short-tempered brat probably when I was 25. Certainly a short-tempered brat on a golf course, which people still remind me of even though I'm 50. So that's part of the wisdom learning there, that you shouldn't lose the enthusiasm and fire, but you should also have an awful lot of respect and control yourself, you know, and be mannerly. And I think I've learned a fair bit of that over the last 25 years. That would be definitely in the bad column.
Ladies and gents, Bob Savage.